I want you to change the world, and don't think that this is going to happen peacefully or you can do it alone. We need to kill the rich. You get out there, you use your weapons, and you rip Washington apart. You hunt down the billionaires, the bank bosses, the CEOs, the scumbags and the liars, the governors, the lobbyists, the senators, because they're all the same, and you hang them.
Good morning, everyone. It's January 3rd, 2021. I'm Eric. How's everyone doing this morning? I hope you're all well. So, in today's video, we're going to discuss a handful of things. And there may actually be some logical order to the way I present it. I have opened up an account over at Reddit. I'm going to start opening accounts on other social media platforms like Reddit, Gab, and so on, just so I have an expanded presence. That being said, let's get started. And if you like my content, please do give me a thumbs up and all that stuff, because it helps. Alright, so I'm here at shtfplan.com, and this article comes from John Whitehead, and he is over there at the Rutherford Institute. I usually mostly agree with, well, what he says in his articles. However, I think even Mr. Whitehead is a little delusional, and you'll see why momentarily. So this is a quote coming from Tulsi Gabbard, a former congresswoman. And I find it kind of her concern kind of ironic, given the fact that she wanted to institute sensible gun laws. Apparently she too does not understand shall not be infringed. In quotes here, this is an issue that all Democrats, Republicans, independents, and libertarians should be extremely concerned about, especially because we don't have to guess where this goes or how this ends. Kind of like the gun bills that she was proposing. What characteristics are we looking for as we are building this profile of a potential extremist? What are we talking about? Religious extremists? Are we talking about Christians, evangelical Christians? What is a religious extremist? Is it somebody who is pro-life? The proposed legislation could create a very dangerous undermining of our civil liberties, our freedoms in our Constitution, and a targeting of almost half of the country. Tulsi Gabbard, former congresswoman. Okay. She said these things, but at the same time, she has supported legislation that diminishes your Second Amendment right. Let us continue. This is how it begins. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitehead, but god damn it, it began a long fucking time ago. We're moving fast down that slippery slope to an authoritarian society, in which the only opinions, ideas, and speech expressed are the ones permitted by the government and its corporate cohorts. Well, that's because the government is a corporation. He goes on to talk about January 6th as if those were actual, detrimental riots. I don't believe any businesses or massive amounts of damage was done. A couple broken windows, but riot. But he says the Capitol riots have become a new poster child for expanding the government's powers at the expense of civil liberties. Of course, domestic terrorism is just the latest bullseye phrase to be used interchangeably with anti-government, extremist, and terrorist to describe anyone who might fall somewhere on the very broad spectrum of viewpoints that could be considered dangerous. Yep. Imagine that. We've long been sliding down that slippery slope, and that slope, man, that motherfucker just keeps getting more and more slippery. Any deja vu mirroring the legislative fallout of 9/11 and the ensuing buildup of the security state, there is a growing demand in certain sectors for the government to be given expanded powers. I mean, look, these people can already come to your house. They can already invade that house. They can already take whatever they wish from that house, including you, your children, your weapons, your money, and anything else they might find either useful or might see as evidence. So that slippery slope has long been, we've already been on it for a long time. This isn't anything new. But Mr. Whitehead talks in this article as if this is some shit that just started happening on February 2nd. I said January again, didn't I? Damn it. I keep saying the wrong date for some reason. For some reason, I'm stuck in January. But I digress. It's February 3rd, 2021, for the record. It was a kind of verbal typo. So he acts as if this is something new that's going on, that just started in February. But the year of 2020 proves that you do not live in a free society. As part of his inaugural address, Biden pledged to confront and defeat a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, and domestic terrorism. Ooh, those are all scary things. Biden has also asked the Director of National Intelligence to work with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security in carrying out a comprehensive threat assessment of domestic terrorism. You know, I could have swore something like that already existed. What was it? Oh, I know. Your threat matrix score. You remember that? That's an actual thing. You have a threat matrix score. And anyone with a certain score gets thrown on not a red list, not a blue list, or pink list, or yellow list, but a black one. A blacklist. I did a video about that a little over a year ago. Forget about the red and blue list. It's now the black list. So, and to keep the parallels going, there is a proposed Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2021. And this was introduced after the so-called riots on January 6th. So, investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald warns, and by the way, Greenwald is a leftist. He's a lefty, and he's even out there talking about it. In quotes, the last 2 weeks have ushered in a wave of new domestic police powers and rhetoric in the name of fighting terrorism that are carbon copies of many of the worst excesses of the first war on terror that began nearly 20 years ago. This new war on terror, one that is domestic in the name from the start and carries the explicit purpose of fighting extremists and domestic terrorists among American citizens on U.S. soil, presents the whole new slew of historically familiar dangers when government or governments exploiting media-generated fear and dangers arm themselves with the power to control information, debate, opinion, activism, and protest. Yep. And if you have any doubt as to who the police state or police in general are serving, we could jump over here to this article. Community bands together to rescue elderly woman medically kidnapped. The life of the senior is still precious to some. Now, this is a photo of the deputy in Vancouver, Clark County, and Washington grabs a woman by the throat and pushes her out of the hospital. She was attempting to go help her 74-year-old mother who was being detained against her will inside of the hospital. Now, this same lady, she tried to call that sheriff's department, Clark County Sheriff's Department, in hopes of getting help to get her mother out of this hospital. And when she did, the damnedest thing happened. They said, "Oh, we don't want to get involved." Then miraculously, when the hospital called them, they were all too willing to get involved. And as a result, a group of people got together, went to the hospital, and started protesting these actions taken by both the hospital and the deputies. For the longest time, people believed that these guys were there to protect and serve them. And many of these people's delusions are being shattered by instances like this, where it is blatantly obvious that this is not the case. Now, I won't go over the whole article, but it is worth pointing out that and this protest group consisted mostly of women and children. Where are the men at in this country? What rock are you hiding under? So, then we can go here. Cops threaten witnesses as they attack, handcuff, and mace a 9-year-old little girl who undoubtedly was having a mental breakdown because she lives in New York. Any kind of physical attack on a child by an armed man, or I guess we can't even call him that because he did attack a child, but an armed male looking like he weighs somewhere around 180 pounds, and putting handcuffs and throwing that child into snow, tasering, I think that's what they did. But nonetheless, mace. It was mace. Nonetheless, people actually believe that these guys, right here, are there to serve and protect them and their communities. But all the actions taken by these individuals really do show otherwise. And it takes some serious mental gymnastics, some serious cognitive dissonance, some serious Stockholm syndrome for this belief to be held in one's mind, given the fact that these attacks routinely take place. I mean, I just talked about this individual not long ago. This person lost his son to a murdering cop. And it's unfortunate that people have to find out the hard way that these dudes, they're there to serve the medical industrial complex. They're there to serve big corporations. They're there to serve the politicians. They're there to serve everyone but you, the average man, woman, and child of Prison State, USA. And it goes on. A cop arrested for faking drive-by shooting on himself, which triggered a massive fucking manhunt for a non-existent person. What if they had come across a person and just willy-nilly accused this person of that drive-by shooting? Meanwhile, this asshole had the whole fucking thing orchestrated. No charges for cop who knocked on innocent dad's door and murdered him when he opened it. Cop arrested for sexually abusing 46 children, forcing them to cut themselves, and threatening to kill them. And this happened in New York. A lot of bad shit going on there, New York. Second Florida school cop in only a week attacks female student, this time with a taser. I mean, how many children, elderly people, unarmed, on their knees, men, well, if they're on their knees begging for their lives, I really wouldn't necessarily call them that, but still, like this person, cop shoots mentally ill man, keeps shooting after he falls down, killing him. There's this guy here, clearly unarmed, clearly not a threat. Meanwhile, a cop gets arrested for bribery, then arrested again for child porn and bestiality. I talked about this one before. And then the cop who forces his dog to maul a 14-year-old boy. And it goes on. 12-year-old finds hidden camera recording in her shower. It belonged to a cop. And DHS terror alert issued for the first time in a year targets those upset over lockdowns. Oh, God, why would they be upset over lockdowns? What could possibly be wrong with that? Oh, could it be that somebody who's put their life into a restaurant that they own had that taken away from them, along with their house, their car, in some cases, and a lot of other things. The most important of which was their freedom. Yeah. So, if you're pissed off about the fucking lockdowns that did way more harm than good, well, you might be a domestic extremist, right? But this guy, he's a sheriff's deputy, or should I say was a sheriff's deputy. Cops' chilling suicide note calls for ending drug war, racist policing, and unity between left and right. And this happened in Lafayette, Louisiana. He said that he can no longer serve a system that doesn't give a damn about him or the people. And his suicide was in protest of, well, that system. He said that if this feels right to you as a person, then something is wrong with you. Y'all are radicalizing people, and then when they get upset and end up going against the system, you come down on them with a hammer. And that's exactly what they've been doing. We need to abandon the idea of Republican and Democrat. We need to abandon the idea that somebody has a higher value on your life than you do, or has a more of a right to rule your life and own you than you do yourself. He went on to say, people are tired of being killed by these cops. They operate with a gang-like mentality similar to the military, and that they are pawns in a larger game, which they are. I wonder how those 401ks and retirement plans there are doing. I'm guessing that probably they're just digital numbers on the screen, or a piece of paper that says you have this asset or that asset, but you really don't. Just a guess, though. What do I know? They operate with a gang-like mentality similar to the military, in that they are pawns in a larger game, but perceive themselves as warriors for a righteous cause. And they do. A lot of them think very highly of themselves and what they do, which is delusional. Cops often turn to suicide after they lose control of their personal lives. They are taught to be control freaks and to be always in control, and it often ends in tragedy. When I was an LAPD officer, I had at least 6 partners and supervisors included who ate their guns. 6 who ate their guns. I'm not going to play his video. I did watch it on my video. However, I will post this video so you can see everything he said on my account. I mean, look at him. He's a man's man, fit. And his solution was to opt out. It must be pretty fucking bad when all these military personnel, all these law enforcement officers kill themselves. Not only that, but how many of them have decent, loving, intact families? How many of their families are broken apart because of their control freak mentality? Those would be some very, very interesting statistics to dig up. Alright, and now the New York Times calls for Biden to appoint a reality czar. To fight misinformation, of course. Won't read every bit of this here, but I will read a couple of the bold sections. This comes from Paul Joseph Watson via Summit News. The New York Times has amplified claims by experts who are calling for Joe Biden to appoint a reality czar. A reality czar. Prompting critics to compare the idea to the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's 1984. The job of this reality Czar, as they call it, would be to head up a centralized task force, could coordinate a single strategic response to things like COVID-related and election fraud conspiracy theories. You know? So, and they're right. That's what it is the ministry of truth. Only what the powers that shouldn't be alive say is reality. Even if your eyes see something completely different than what they tell you, your perception of reality is flawed, and therefore your voice must be silenced. You know, for the greater good. So, here we go. But if conspiracy theories really do pose a deadly threat to society, who is responsible for pushing the most egregious disinformation? Yeah, it's the corporate press that are responsible for this. The corporate press, pushing for these two whoppers, created the consensus for what war that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and an international migrant crisis. It's those people who dictate your reality. Again, even when your eyes see something completely fucking different. If there really was a truly independent reality czar, the media would be in big trouble because its entire, existence is predicated around distorting reality. So, there you go. I will be posting the links to the new accounts, pinned comment, perhaps the description box. If you like my content, please do subscribe, thumbs up, and all that stuff. Because we're fixing to need each other in very profound ways. And by the way, I will be opening a new YouTube account. I think the channel name will be the Enochian Church of Truth. The Enochian Church of Truth. Tell me what you think in the comment section, and until next time, kill the state, live free.